Admiral Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the massive shapes appear on the edge of the solar system. The warning alarms filled the command center with their harsh sound. 3 months ago, Earth had made contact with other intelligent life in the galaxy. Now something was coming to kill them all. "How many ships?" asked her sensor officer. "Over 2,000, Admiral, maybe more. They're big." Lieutenant Torres looked up from her console, her face pale. "Really big." Nodded. She had been afraid of this day since Earth joined the Galactic Coalition. The other alien races had warned them about the swarm. They were like space locusts, eating entire planets and moving on to the next world. Most coalition species just ran when the swarm came, but humans had nowhere to run. This was their home. "Signal all Earth defense ships. Form up around Earth. Send the civilian ships to the jump points." Turn to her communications officer. "Contact Coalition Command. Tell them we need help." The young officer worked for several minutes before looking up with bad news. "Admiral, Coalition Command says they cannot spare ships for Earth. They're pulling back to stronger positions." Felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. The alien races thought humans were too new, too weak to matter. Earth had only been in space for 200 years. The Coalition members had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. To them, humans were just children playing with toys. "Then we fight alone," said. "Signal the fleet. All ships prepare for battle." Earth's fleet was small compared to what was coming. 50 ships total, with the Defiance being the largest. The humans had built them fast and tough, but they used old technology compared to the rest of the galaxy. Human weapons were kinetic rounds and nuclear missiles. Most alien races used energy weapons and force fields that humans could barely understand. The ships moved into the solar system like a living wave. They were not built like normal ships. They were grown. The alien vessels looked like massive sea creatures that lived in space. Their hulls were thick and organic, covered in what looked like skin and bone. Some were small, like fighters. Others were huge, bigger than Earth's largest cities. "They're moving past Mars," Torres reported. "Speed is increasing. They'll reach the outer defense platforms in 6 hours." Had placed Earth's defense platforms at the asteroid belt. Huge weapons and missile launchers built into the rocks themselves. It was humanity's first line of defense, but she knew it would not be enough. "Signal the platforms. Begin long-range bombardment as soon as the enemy is in range." Hours passed, watched as humanity's weapons reached out across space to hit the alien ships. Nuclear missiles exploded against the organic hulls in bright flashes of light. Kinetic rounds fired from rail guns struck like hammers. For a moment, felt hope. Several ships were damaged, and a few smaller ones were destroyed. Then the aliens fired back. The weapons were alive. They shot what looked like large seeds across space. When the seeds hit the defense platforms, they grew. In minutes, the metal and rock platforms were covered with alien plants that ate through everything they touched. Platform after platform went silent. "Platform 7 is gone, Admiral. Platform 12 is not responding. Platform 3 reports the alien growth is spreading through their power systems." Closed her eyes for a moment. Earth's first line of defense was falling apart in less than an hour. "Pull all remaining platforms back to Earth orbit. Signal the fleet. We're moving to close defense." The human ships moved back toward their home world, looked at the tactical display. So many red dots representing enemy ships, so few blue dots for her own fleet. The math was simple and terrible. They reached Earth space like a storm. Their fighter ships moved in huge groups, covering space like clouds of insects. The larger ships stayed back, but even from far away their weapons could reach Earth's surface. "All ships engage the enemy," ordered. The battle began in earnest. Human pilots flew their small, fast ships into the alien swarm. They were brave, but their weapons barely scratched the enemy's organic armor. The fighters moved strangely, like they were swimming through space instead of flying. They fired living missiles that chased human ships and exploded in bursts of acid. Watched young pilots die on her screen. Each blue dot that disappeared was someone's child, someone's friend, but they kept fighting. The human ships used their speed and teamwork to hit the aliens where they were weakest. Sometimes it worked. Most times it did not. "Admiral, the enemy is targeting the evacuation ships," Torres said, her voice shaking. Looked at the display. Huge civilian transports were trying to escape Earth's gravity well, filled with children and families. They had noticed them and were moving to attack. Squadron 7 and 9 protect those transports. All other ships keep hitting their fighters. The human fleet was dying. 20 ships had been destroyed in the first hour of fighting. The Defiance herself had taken damage, her hull cracked in 3 places. Emergency repair teams worked desperately to keep the ship fighting. But something was wrong with the attack. They were holding back their big ships, realized they were not trying to destroy Earth quickly. They wanted to capture it intact, to harvest everything on the planet slowly. That gave humanity a little time, but not much. "Ma'am, we're detecting something strange," Torres said. "There's a massive energy reading near Jupiter. It just appeared on sensors." Looked at the new contact. It was bigger than anything in the battle, but it was not moving toward Earth. It was just sitting there, watching. "Keep monitoring it. We have bigger problems right now." They began their final push toward Earth. Their largest ships moved forward, weapons charging for planetary bombardment. Knew the end was coming. Earth's remaining defense platforms were firing everything they had, but it was not enough. Then space exploded with light near Jupiter. Something huge had just activated some kind of cloaking device. A ship appeared where empty space had been a moment before. A ship larger than any vessel, with a design unlike anything in the galaxy's databases. And it was moving toward the battle at impossible speed. Admiral stared at the massive unknown ship on her display, but she could not focus on it now. They were breaking through Earth's last defenses. 3 of their largest bioships had moved within range of the planet and were preparing to fire their bombardment weapons. "All remaining ships fall back to Earth's inner orbital space," ordered. Her heart was heavy with the decision, but they had no choice. "Signal the outer colonies. Tell them to evacuate immediately." The retreat was chaos. Human ships that had fought bravely for hours now ran for their lives. Some did not make it. Watched the marathon explode as 3 fighters surrounded it. The Beijing lost power and drifted helplessly until alien weapons tore it apart. "Ma'am, we're receiving evacuation reports from the colonies," her communications officer said. "Mars Station is launching their last transport. The mining platforms around Jupiter are going dark to avoid detection." Nodded. Millions of humans were fleeing their homes, leaving behind everything they had built. But at least they would live. Maybe. The first bombardment beam hit Earth's atmosphere 20 minutes later. The weapon was like a living thing, a stream of energy that pulsed and moved like a snake. When it touched the upper atmosphere, the air itself seemed to catch fire. Emergency reports flooded in from Earth's surface. "Bombardment hit the Pacific Ocean," reported Lieutenant Torres. "The water is changing color. Something is growing in it." Doctor, Earth's top expert on alien life, was working frantically in the Defiance's science lab. He had been studying pieces of bioships that human fighters had shot off during the battle. What he was finding made his blood run cold. "Admiral to the science lab immediately," said over the ship's communication system. Left the bridge to her second in command and hurried to lab. She found the doctor staring at his computer screen with a look of horror on his face. "What did you find?" Looked up at her with tired eyes. "Sarah, this is not the first time they've been in human space." "What do you mean?" Pointed to his screen, which showed complex genetic information. "I've been analyzing the alien tissue we collected. Deep in their genetic code, I found human DNA markers, very old ones. Felt the world spin around her. That's impossible. No, it's not. The markers match records from the UES Endeavour, the colony ship that disappeared 200 years ago during our first expansion wave. Hands shook as he brought up historical records. Sarah, the captured that ship. They took over 1,000 human colonists. Stared at the data. The Endeavour had been humanity's pride, their first attempt to establish a colony beyond Earth's solar system. It had vanished without a trace, and no one had ever known what happened to it. But why would their genetic code have human markers? Asked. Because they absorbed them. The don't just eat planets, Sarah. They absorb the life on them. They take the genetic information and use it to make themselves stronger. His voice was quiet with horror. Those colonists became part of the swarm. Before could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. She ran back to the bridge to find chaos. They had launched thousands of fighter organisms toward Earth. They moved like a living cloud, covering the space between their large ships and the planet. All fighters launch immediately, ordered. Stop as many as possible before they reach the atmosphere. Human pilots flew their small ships into the alien swarm with desperate courage. The space around Earth lit up with weapons fire and explosions, but there were too many enemies. For every alien fighter destroyed, 10 more took its place. The first wave of organisms hit Earth's atmosphere and began to fall toward the surface like deadly rain. Emergency broadcasts from the planet reported alien creatures landing in major cities. They were small but deadly, and they quickly. Admiral, we're losing contact with ground stations, Tors reported. London, New York, and Tokyo have gone silent. Clenched her fists. Earth was falling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The human fleet was down to 30 ships, and they were all damaged. The Still had over 1,000 vessels, and their largest ships had not even started fighting yet. Ma'am, that unknown contact near Jupiter is moving, Tors said suddenly. Looked at the tactical display. The massive ship that had appeared from nowhere was indeed moving. It was coming toward Earth at a speed that should have been impossible for something so large. Try to contact them, ordered. Any ship heading toward this battle might be able to help. The communications officer worked for several minutes. I'm getting something, Admiral. It's using an old Earth frequency. Very old. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled with static, then a voice came through. It was human, speaking English with an accent that sounded familiar but strange. Earth Defense Fleet, this is the UES Endeavour. We're coming home. Every person on the bridge froze, felt her blood turn to ice. The Endeavour had been lost for 200 years. Everyone aboard had been declared dead long ago. This is Admiral of the EDS Defiance. Identify yourself properly. The Endeavour was destroyed 2 centuries ago. Admiral, this is Captain of the United Earth ship Endeavour. We've been gone a long time, but we never stopped being human. We're here to help. Looked up Captain in the historical database. According to records, she had been the Endeavour's commanding officer when the ship vanished. She should have died of old age long ago, even if she had somehow survived the ship's disappearance. Captain, how is this possible? It's a long story, Admiral, but right now we have to kill. The unknown ship was closer now and could see it better on her main screen. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The hull looked like it was made of metal and living tissue combined together. Parts of it pulsed like a heartbeat. Weapons that looked more grown than built covered its surface. All human ships, pull back and let us work, Captain said. Was about to argue when the impossible ship opened fire on the forces. Its weapons were like nothing in any database. Beams of energy that seemed to be alive shot out and struck the alien bioships. But instead of destroying them, the beams did something worse. The ships began attacking each other. watched in amazement as alien vessels that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly turned their weapons on their neighbors. Confusion spread through the swarm as ships that should have been allies began destroying each other. "How are they doing that?" whispered. "We learned their language," Captain said, somehow hearing the question. "All of it." The transformed ship moved through space like a living creature. Admiral watched in amazement as it twisted and turned in ways that should have been impossible for something so large. The vessel's weapons continued to fire at the forces, and each shot caused more confusion in the alien ranks. "Captain, we need to understand what we're seeing," said over the communication channel. "How is the Endeavor still operational? How are you still alive?" There was a long pause before the answer came. "Admiral, permission to come aboard your ship. This conversation needs to happen face to face." Looked around her bridge. Every officer was staring at her, waiting for her decision. The smart thing would be to say no. This could be a trap or an alien trick, but the mysterious ship was destroying vessels that had been killing her people just minutes before. "Permission granted. Dock with our main bay." Left Lieutenant Torres in command of the bridge and headed to the docking bay with a security team. She did not know what to expect. Would Captain look like she had aged 200 years? Would she even look human anymore? The shuttle that detached from the mysterious ship was unlike anything had ever seen. It looked like it had been grown rather than built, with a smooth surface that pulsed gently like skin. When it landed in the Defiance's bay, it opened without any visible doors. The hull simply parted like flower petals. Captain stepped out and his breath caught in her throat. The woman looked exactly like her historical photos, as if she had not aged a single day in 2 centuries. But something was different. Her eyes had flecks of gold in them that seemed to move. Her skin had a slight shimmer that was not quite human. "Admiral," said, walking forward, "thank you for allowing me aboard." "Captain, I need to know what happened to your ship. What happened to your crew?" Nodded. 200 years ago, we were ambushed by a scouting force while trying to establish a colony on New Horizon. Our weapons were useless against their bioships. We were captured. But the records say the Endeavor was destroyed. We wanted Earth to think that it was safer. His expression grew dark. "They don't just kill their prisoners, Admiral. They absorb them. They take the genetic information from other species and use it to make themselves stronger." "Felt sick? You mean they ate your crew?" "They tried to, but my crew was not willing to just die quietly." Smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "We made a deal, a terrible, dangerous deal." "What kind of deal?" "We allowed the integration to happen, but we stayed conscious during the process. Instead of being absorbed completely, we became something new. Part human, part, but still ourselves." Stared at the woman in front of her. "You're saying you're not entirely human anymore." "I'm as human as I ever was, Admiral, but I'm also something more." Held up her hand, and watched in fascination as the skin briefly became translucent, showing golden veins underneath. "The integration gave us access to their biological technology, their knowledge, their abilities, but we kept our human minds, our human hearts." "That should be impossible." "Humans are very good at surviving impossible situations," said. "We spent 200 years learning everything we could about the swarm. We grew stronger, we adapted, we prepared for the day when they would threaten Earth." Alarms began sounding on the ship. Communicator crackled to life. "Admiral, they are regrouping. They've stopped fighting each other and are forming a new attack pattern." Looked at, "We need to get back to the bridge." Agreed. As they walked through the corridors of the Defiance, explained more of her story. "My crew and I were not the only ones who made the choice to integrate. About half of the Endeavor's passengers agreed to the process. The others chose to die as purely human. We respected their choice." "How many of you are left?" 43. "We started with 512. His voice was sad. "The integration was never meant to last this long. Our bodies are failing. We have perhaps hours left before the biological systems break down completely. Felt a chill. You came here to die. We came here to save Earth and to pass on what we learned. They reached the bridge and was surprised to see that several of her officers were staring at with recognition. "Captain, you look exactly like your historical photos," Tor said. "The integration process stopped our aging," explained, "but it's also killing us slowly." Looked at the tactical display. They had indeed stopped fighting each other and were reorganizing. Their largest ships were moving toward Earth again. "What was that weapon you used? How did you make them attack each other?" Bioships are controlled by chemical and electrical signals, like a nervous system. We learned how to hack into those signals and send false commands, studied the display. But they're adapting to our interference. We won't be able to use that trick much longer. As if to prove her point, several ships fired at the transformed Endeavor. The organic weapons struck the ship's hull, but instead of causing damage, they seemed to be absorbed. "Your ship can eat their weapons?" asked. "Our ship is alive, Admiral. It can adapt and evolve in real time, but it has limits," activated her communicator. "Endeavor, this is the captain. Begin attack pattern Omega." On the main screen, watched the living ship transform itself. Parts of its hull reshaped themselves into massive weapon arrays. Other sections grew what looked like armor plating. Within minutes, the vessel had changed from an exploration ship into a weapon of war. The Endeavor attacked the formation with devastating effectiveness. Its new weapons fired beams that seemed to cause the alien bioships to dissolve from the inside out. When fighters swarmed toward it, defensive systems that looked like living plants shot out from the hull and destroyed the attackers. "This is incredible," said. "With technology like this, we could drive off the entire swarm." Shook her head sadly. "We don't have long enough, Admiral, and even if we did, there's a cost to this power." "What kind of cost?" "Look at me, Admiral, really look." Studied more closely. The golden veins under her skin were more visible now, and they seemed to be spreading. Her eyes, which had been mostly normal with just flecks of gold, were now completely golden. "The integration is accelerating," said. "Combat situations make it worse. I have maybe 2 hours before I'm no longer human enough to function. My crew has even less time. There has to be something we can do." "There is, but not for us." Turned to Tors. "Lieutenant, I need you to start recording everything I'm about to tell you. Earth's scientists need this information." For the next hour, as the Endeavor continued to tear through forces, shared the knowledge her crew had gained over 2 centuries. She explained how biotechnology worked, how human genetics could be modified to interface with it, and most importantly, how to turn the swarm's own weapons against them. "The key is not to fight the integration," she explained. "Human DNA is incredibly adaptable. We can absorb and modify biological systems without losing ourselves, but only if we understand what we're doing." Doctor, who had been called to the bridge, listened with growing excitement. "Captain, this could revolutionize everything. We could modify our weapons, our ships, even our people to fight the swarm effectively." "But carefully," warned. "The integration changes you. Some of my crew lost themselves completely in the early years. Others became something that was no longer human in any way that mattered." On the tactical display, could see that the Endeavor was winning its battle with the ships near Earth, but more alien vessels were entering the solar system. Thousands more. "Captain, there are too many of them," said. "Even with your ship, we can't fight them all." Smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young woman from the historical photos. "Admiral, you're thinking like the old Earth fleet, but you're about to become something new." Captain collapsed against the bridge rail as golden lines spread across her face like lightning. Doctor rushed to help her, but she waved him away. "I'm fine for now," she said, though her voice was weaker. "But we need to move fast. "Admiral, I'm going to transmit everything to your computers. All our research, all our modifications, everything we learned about fighting the..." Watched as data flooded into the Defiance's systems. 200 years of knowledge, downloaded in minutes. Her science officers stared at their screens in amazement as secrets of biotechnology filled their databases. "This is incredible," said, studying the information. "Captain, you found ways to modify human biology that we never dreamed possible, but the risks are worth it." Finished. "Look around you, Doctor. Earth is about to be destroyed. My crew and I are dying anyway. At least this way our sacrifice means something." On the main screen, more ships were entering the solar system. The Endeavor had destroyed dozens of alien vessels, but hundreds more were taking their place. Realized that even with the transformed ship's help, they were still vastly outnumbered. "Captain, your ship is amazing, but there's only one of it. We need more ships that can fight like yours." "You already have them," said. "Every ship in your fleet can be modified. Every weapon can be improved. Every human can be enhanced. But it has to happen now, while my crew is still alive to guide the process." Looked at, "Doctor, how long would it take to modify our ships?" Studied the data flowing across his screen. "According to this, we could begin basic modifications in hours. The biotechnology can be grafted onto existing human systems. Our ships could become living vessels like the Endeavor." "Do it," ordered. "Signal the entire fleet. All ships are to prepare for emergency modifications." "Admiral, there's something else," said. She was leaning heavily on the rail now, her skin becoming more translucent by the minute. "The modifications work better if humans volunteer to be integrated as well. Not like my crew, we went too far. But limited integration, enough to interface with the biotechnology." "You're asking our people to become part alien." "I'm asking them to become more than they were before," smiled weakly. "Humans are the most adaptable species in the galaxy, Admiral. We can take the best parts of any other species and make them our own, without losing what makes us human." Looked around her bridge. Every officer was listening to the conversation. She knew she was asking them to risk their humanity to save their species. "I'll do it first," she said. "If there are risks, I'll take them." "Admiral, no," Torres protested. "Let me do it. I'm younger, I can handle the integration better." "I'll go first," said. "I understand the science better than anyone." Laughed, though it turned into a cough. "You see, this is why humans will win. Other species would argue about the risks and waste time making careful decisions. Humans just volunteer to jump into danger to protect each other." Within an hour, the first modifications began. Worked with to create a safe integration process, not the desperate fusion that the Endeavor's crew had, but a careful blending of human and biology. Was indeed the first to volunteer, lying down in the Defiance's medical bay as biotechnological systems were grafted into her nervous system. The process was strange but not painful. Felt new senses awakening as the alien technology integrated with her human biology. She could suddenly feel the ship around her like it was part of her body. When she touched the modified control panels, they responded to her thoughts instead of her fingers. "How do you feel, Admiral?" asked. He was monitoring her vital signs with equipment that was itself partially alive now. "Different but still me." Stood up and looked at her hands. There were faint golden lines under her skin, but they were much lighter than s. "I can feel the ship systems. It's like the Defiance is alive now." And it was. Working with guidance from the Endeavor's crew, human engineers had begun grafting biotechnology onto the ship's hull and systems. The rigid metal structure was becoming something organic, something that could adapt and evolve during battle. Similar modifications were happening throughout the human fleet. Pilots volunteered to undergo integration so they could interface directly with their modified fighters. Engineers worked to merge human weapons with alien biotechnology. In just a few hours, Humanity was transforming itself into something the galaxy had never seen. The first test came when a group of fighters attacked the modified human ships. The results were dramatic. Human vessels that had barely been able to scratch alien armor were now tearing through bioships with ease. Modified pilots flew with impossible skill, their consciousness directly connected to their living fighters. "Admiral, this is incredible," Torres reported. She had also integration and was now interfacing directly with the ship's sensor systems. "I can feel every ship in the system. I know what they're thinking before they do it." But the real shock came when captured fighters were brought aboard human ships. Instead of studying them, the modified humans began talking to them. The biotechnology had given them the ability to communicate with the alien organisms. "They're not evil," Doctor reported, his eyes now showing the same golden flecks as the others. "They are just following their nature. They absorb other species because that's how they evolve. They don't understand that other intelligent beings have their own thoughts and feelings." Listen to this with growing understanding. So they're not trying to be cruel. They just don't realize we're truly alive in the way they understand life. Exactly, but now we can show them. The battle around Earth changed completely as more human ships underwent modification. Instead of simply destroying vessels, the enhanced humans began capturing them and communicating with their crews. They explained concepts like individual consciousness and independent thought to aliens who had never encountered such ideas. Some rejected these concepts and continued fighting, but others listened and learned. For the first time in the swarm's history, they were encountering a species that could absorb their technology without being absorbed themselves. Captain was barely conscious now, her body more alien than human, but she managed to speak to one last time. "Admiral, we need to stop the Queen ship," she whispered. "It's coming. The largest vessel in the swarm if it reaches Earth." "Where is it?" asked. Pointed weakly toward the outer system. "Beyond Jupiter. It's huge, Admiral, larger than a city. Our ship can stop it, but the Endeavor will have to ram it. The biotechnology integration is failing throughout our ship. We're dying anyway. But if we can take the Queen ship with us, the rest of the swarm will scatter." Felt tears in her eyes. "Captain, there has to be another way." "There is no other way, but it's not a death, Admiral, it's a transformation," smiled one last time. "We came home to save Earth. We came home to give you what you needed to survive. Mission accomplished." The Endeavor began moving toward the outer system, where the Queen ship was approaching, but was no longer just watching the battle. She was part of it now, connected to every modified ship in her fleet through the biotechnological network they had created. "All ships follow the Endeavor," she ordered. "We're going to finish this fight together." For the first time since the battle began, felt hope. Humanity was no longer the weak, primitive species that the galaxy had dismissed. They had become something new, something that could adapt to any challenge and make it their own. The real battle was about to begin. The Queen ship was a nightmare made real. As it emerged from behind Jupiter's shadow, Admiral understood why Captain had looked so afraid. The vessel was larger than any human city, a massive organic structure that pulsed with alien life. Thousands of smaller bioships swarmed around it like antibodies protecting a living organism. "My God," whispered Torres from her station. Through her biotechnological integration, she could feel the Queen ship's presence like a weight in her mind. "Admiral, it's not just a ship. It's alive, truly alive, and it's ancient." Nodded, her enhanced senses picking up the same terrible awareness. The Queen ship was more than a vessel. It was the living heart of the entire swarm, a creature that had consumed hundreds of worlds over thousands of years. "All ships maintain formation," ordered. "Modified vessels take point. We're going to punch through their defensive screen and give the Endeavor a clear shot at the Queen." The final battle began as humanity's transformed fleet engaged the defenders. The difference from the earlier fight was dramatic. Human ships that had struggled against basic biofighters were now matching the aliens blow for blow. The integration had given them more than just new weapons. It had given them understanding. Lieutenant Tors, her consciousness expanded through biotechnological enhancement, suddenly gasped. "Admiral, I can hear them. The fighters. They're confused. They don't understand how we can use their own technology against them." "Tell them," said, "explain what we are now." Through the biotechnological network, the enhanced humans began communicating with their enemies even as they fought them. They transmitted concepts of choice, of voluntary integration, of becoming something new without losing the original self. The response from them was chaos. Some of the alien bioships stopped fighting entirely, their crews overwhelmed by ideas they had never encountered. Others fought with increased fury, rejecting the human concepts as impossible lies. "The Queen ship is responding," Tors reported. "It's sending out some kind of signal. I can feel it trying to override the confused fighters." Doctor, now fully integrated with the ship's biosystems, analyzed the alien transmissions. "The Queen is trying to reassert control over the swarm. It's forcing the confused fighters to keep fighting by suppressing their individual awareness." Felt anger rise in her enhanced consciousness. The Queen ship was enslaving its own people, preventing them from making their own choices about what they could become. "That ends now," she said. The Endeavor was struggling as it approached the Queen ship. Captain's voice came over the communication system, weak but determined. "Admiral, our biosystems are failing. We won't be able to maintain ship integrity much longer." "Can you reach the Queen?" asked. "Yes, but it will take everything we have. Once we begin the final approach, we won't be coming back." Looked around her bridge. Every officer was connected to the biotechnological network now, their enhanced awareness linked together in a way that made them stronger than the sum of their parts. "Captain, you've given us everything we need to survive, but let us help you finish this." "Admiral, what are you thinking?" Smiled as she felt the network of enhanced humans around her share her plan. "You taught us that humans can adapt to anything, but you also taught us that we're stronger together." Through the biotechnological link, connected her consciousness to the Endeavor. Around the solar system, every modified human ship did the same. Suddenly, and her dying crew were no longer alone. They were supported by hundreds of enhanced humans, their failing biosystems stabilized by the network they had created. "Incredible," whispered, her voice stronger now. "I can feel all of you. We're not dying anymore. We're becoming part of something larger." The Endeavor surged forward with renewed power, but now it was not alone. Every human ship in the fleet was connected to it, sharing their strength, their knowledge, their determination. The biotechnological network had created something unprecedented, a single consciousness spanning multiple vessels, while still maintaining the individual identity of every person involved. The Queen ship fired its most powerful weapons at the approaching human fleet. Bioenergy beams that could destroy planets struck the modified ships, but instead of being destroyed, the human vessels absorbed the energy and became stronger. "We're learning their weapons in real time," reported with amazement. "Every attack they make teaches us more about their technology." The Queen ship's defensive fighters tried to overwhelm the human fleet with sheer numbers, but the enhanced humans were ready for them. Modified pilots flew their living fighters with impossible coordination, each pilot supported by the knowledge and skills of every other pilot in the network. "Admiral, we're in range of the Queen ship," reported, "beginning final approach." But as the Endeavor closed with its target, something unexpected happened. The Queen ship began to communicate, not through weapons or violence, but through the same biotechnological signals the humans were using. "It's trying to talk to us," Tors said in amazement. "The Queen, she's afraid." The consciousness that was the queenship was ancient beyond human understanding, but it had never encountered anything like the enhanced humans. For thousands of years, it had absorbed other species completely, making them part of itself. But the humans remained themselves even as they used technology. The concept terrified and fascinated the queen in equal measure. "Show her," said, "show her what we've become." Through the biotechnological network, the enhanced humans transmitted their nature to the queenship. They showed her how they had taken technology and made it their own without losing their humanity. They demonstrated the concept of voluntary integration, of choosing to become more while remaining yourself. The queenship's response was a mixture of wonder and fear. For the first time in its existence, it was faced with beings that could not be absorbed, could not be controlled, but could still coexist. The Endeavor was now close enough to ram the queenship, but held her fire. "Admiral, she's willing to negotiate. The queen wants to understand what we are." "Then let's teach her." The negotiation that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Enhanced humans, their consciousness expanded through biotechnological integration, communicated directly with an ancient alien intelligence that had consumed entire civilizations. They shared concepts of individual choice, of symbiosis instead of absorption, of growth through cooperation rather than domination. Slowly, carefully, the queenship began to understand. They had evolved as a collective consciousness, absorbing other species to gain their knowledge. But they had never learned that other forms of consciousness could exist alongside their own. "She's willing to try a different way," reported. "But the rest of the swarm won't understand. They'll see any change as a betrayal of their nature." "Then we'll teach them too," said. The final phase of the battle was not fought with weapons, but with ideas. Enhanced humans throughout the fleet reached out to individual fighters, sharing their experiences of voluntary integration. Some aliens rejected the concepts entirely and had to be defeated in traditional combat, but others listened, learned, and chose to experiment with coexistence rather than absorption. Within hours, the swarm had split into two factions. The traditionalists, led by younger queenships, retreated to the outer galaxy to continue their old ways. But a significant portion of the swarm remained near Earth, fascinated by what they had learned from humanity. Captain and the crew of the Endeavor made one final choice. Instead of dying as their biosystems failed, they chose to integrate completely with the network of enhanced humans. Their knowledge, their experiences, and their consciousness became part of the collective human awareness that had emerged from the crisis. "We're not dying," said, her voice now coming from every enhanced human in the fleet. "We're becoming part of something that will outlast any individual ship or person. We're becoming part of humanity's future." 6 months later, Doctor stood on the observation deck of the new Endeavor, watching as human ships worked alongside bio-vessels to establish the first truly integrated colony. The transformation that had begun during the battle for Earth had spread throughout human space. Humanity had become something unprecedented in the galaxy, a species that could absorb and integrate with any other form of life while maintaining their essential nature. They were not conquerors or victims, but partners who could help other species evolve beyond their limitations. "Doctor," his assistant said, approaching with a report, "we've received a message from the Galactic Coalition. They want to discuss formal recognition of humanity's new status." Smiled. The alien races that had written off Earth as too primitive to matter were now desperately trying to understand what humanity had become. Reports were spreading throughout the galaxy of humans working with former enemies, of species thought extinct being restored through biotechnological integration, of entire star systems being transformed from into gardens. "Tell the Coalition we'll be happy to meet with them," said, "but make it clear that we're not the same species they knew before. We've evolved." He looked out at the stars, where human ships were traveling to worlds that had been consumed by various swarms over the Their mission was not conquest, but liberation, freeing the genetic information of absorbed species and helping them choose their own path to revival. Humanity had done something the galaxy thought impossible. They had turned their greatest weakness, their primitive technology and lack of natural defenses, into their greatest strength. Their ability to adapt to change, to become more while remaining themselves, had made them into something the universe had never seen before. They were still human, but they were also something more, the shepherds of evolution itself, helping every species they encountered become the best version of what they could be. In a galaxy full of ancient species set in their ways, humanity had evolved their enemies into extinction, and themselves into something the universe had never seen before. They had become the gardeners of consciousness itself, helping other forms of life grow beyond their original limitations, while never losing sight of what made each species unique. The age of humanity had begun.